What is going on, guys? Moving along with Project Zailas, our next part that we're going to be putting in is the Stillen Gen 3 long tube intakes. This is a 2007 350Z, so it's an HR with the double intakes. It has one on both sides instead of the previous model, which was the DE, which had only the single airbox on the one side. The HR has two, and so the intakes are actually going to be replacing both of those right there. Now this is what the Stillen Gen 3 long tube intake kit looks like. You have, of course, the two intakes, two sets of piping, and all the couplings, all the clamps, and all the hardware that you're going to need. Comes with some wiring because you got to extend your horn wire a little bit and remount your horns in a different location. It's a very beautiful kit. Everything looks nice and tidy. And the piping is really nicely welded. You can see beautiful welding on the piping, and very quality craftsmanship through and through. K&N filters, K&N always the best. Really nice, can't go wrong with that. Nice branding on the side of the upper piping as well. It's really cool. And they also have the slots for the MAF sensors right there. So that's where we'll be replacing the MAF sensors. Kind of a straightforward install. Intake installs are not usually a very difficult process. It's typically just a matter of loosening up the factory clamps and pulling the old intake box out, which is going to be this clamp right here. And then of course you got to disconnect your MAF and pull this whole box and everything out. With the Z, it's going to be a little bit more of a challenge for us because I have a long tube intake. There's a couple of different kinds of intakes that you can get. You can either get a long tube, which is actually going to come all the way down toward the front bumper and take air in from the front part of the car right here. Or there's the short ram version, which is going to basically just replace the box. It has tubing, and then your new filter goes right in the place of the factory box. But personally, I opted for the long tube version. I think number one, it just kind of tidies up the engine bay a little bit more and helps to bring in just a little bit more cold air in through the front bumper right there. It's going to coincide perfectly with my new shark nose bumper that I have going on the car. The air is going to flow right up under the into the mouth of the bumper and right up into the intakes, so it's going to be a great setup. So as for tools, you don't need a whole lot. Just you need a minus and a plus driver, assorted sockets, and a wrench and a ratchet. You're going to need some wire crimpers. You don't absolutely need these. You can do it with like one of these plier cutters too, if you're careful. You can do your wiring with that, but this definitely helps. It has all the different sizes for wiring, and this is just going to be to cut the wiring, the horn wiring right there, and then use the crimper to crimp down the crimpers. It'll all make sense as we go along, get to the different parts of the install. I will note that I have already removed the strut tower brace. It is not on the car at the moment, it's sitting right there. And that is because I was doing my upper control arms as well, so I took it off for that and I left it off. And you do not have to remove that. You can leave it on for this and just kind of work the piping out underneath, but it does make it a lot easier because you don't have to worry about the bar there. So it helps, but it's not necessary to take it off. So in my case, it's already off, so we're good to go with that. First thing you need to do on this install is disconnect your negative battery terminal. You don't want any power at all flowing through the engine bay. We are going to be pulling the MAFs and also cutting through the horn wire, and so we don't want any power at all. It's very important. And then after that, we're going to go ahead and nix the plastic engine cover. It's just held on by some 10mm screws. And that's going to allow us to access some of the tubing on the factory air boxes right there. So we will pull those out. Just give us a little extra room in there. So let's get started with that. Alright, so now that we have our battery disconnected and the factory engine cover removed, we're going to go ahead and work on getting the air boxes out at this point. So we're going to go ahead and unclip the MAFs on both sides. We'll go ahead and just unclip them. You don't have to unscrew them right here yet. We'll do that later. Just unclip them, and you're also going to want to unclip the wiring from the air box right here. So make sure that's all free. Then we're going to go ahead and remove this 10mm bolt here that holds down the air box. And then we're also going to remove this little clamp right here from the breather hose that goes into the intake. So we'll remove all that, and also remove this clamp right here that connects the intake hose into the throttle body. We'll get rid of all that, and then we'll work on pulling this out. Man, I would tell you, these little clamps on these little breather hoses, pain in the ass. Pain in the ass. Alright, so at this point we have both of the factory air boxes completely removed. It was pretty easy, with the one exception being the little clamps that attach the breather hose to the intake. Those little things were a pain in the ass, let me tell you. Could not believe how much trouble those things gave me, but anyways, got them off, they're taken care of. We can move on to the next step, which is going to be to go ahead and remove these metal brackets right here that are on the front of the radiator core support. There's just two 10mm bolts, one on each one here and one here. So we'll go ahead and take those brackets off so that we can free up this space right here. And then we're going to go ahead and remove the ducting. This is a plastic ducting in here that is just held on by a couple of plastic clips that we'll go ahead and pop those out and take the duct out. That's going to create a nice little opening here for our new piping to come through. We will not be reusing these ducts. They're going. So let's go ahead and take care of that. Just get these two metal brackets off and take the ducts out, and then we're going to start feeding our piping in there. Alright, so next up we need to remove the horns, as we will be relocating them. So we're going to go ahead and take them out with just a 10mm ratchet. It's a 10mm bolt that's holding each one of them to the core support right here. So we're going to go ahead and get rid of those and then unplug them so that we can cut the wires and splice the new longer wires in, because they're going to be relocated down in the center right here. Alright, so we got the horns out. The clips are just little mini push button clips. You got to push them in and really yank it out pretty strong. They're in there pretty good, so just give it a good yank and it should come out. Just don't pull it by the wire itself. Make sure you're pushing that clip in and just pull that thing out from the plastic connector. So now that we have the horns out and we have the wires here loose, I'm going to go ahead and cut some of this plastic sheathing, cut it back, and then we're going to cut the wire, and then I'm going to go ahead and extend the wiring on both of them. There's 2 clips per horn, and there's 2 horns. So we're just going to go ahead and clip both of the wires and then rewire it long enough so that it can fit in the center of the radiator core support right here. So extend it by about 6 inches or so. And they provide you the wire, and also they provide you a ton of these little crimper connectors. So I'm going to go ahead and cut back that sheet and cut these wires. Alright, so as you can see, I've gone ahead and extended the wires. I just cut the sheathing back and cut the wires. There's 2 of them per horn. So I cut the wires and then put a crimper connector on each one of the wires, and then attach the new wires to it. Cut it down to length, of course, and then I attached the crimpers, crimped it in, and then I attached the connectors to the other end of the new wires. 2 more crimpers, and then I did that for both of them. So we got a nice extension here. So now when we mount the horns in the center of the core support here, the wires are now going to reach down to that location. So we're good to go with that. Don't worry about plugging these into the horns just yet. We're going to do that in just a little bit. We got to mount the horns first and put our tubing and stuff in, and then we'll plug everything in once the intakes and everything are in. So before we head up and start putting our tubing in, we're going to go ahead and unbolt the power steering fluid cooler. Right here it's just 2 bolts. You can see underneath here there's just one here and one here. We're just going to unbolt that and let that dangle out of the way so it's not in our way as we bring the filters up, put the filter in right here. And then once everything's all taken care of, we can button that back up after the filter's in there. Damn, that's not good. It just broke right off of there. Well, I don't think it's going to cause me too much trouble because I can get a new bolt back in there. Looks like the other end of it just kind of fell down into the bottom of the core support. It's not a big deal. Right, so we got both bolts out here. We're just going to let this dangle just enough so that we can move it a little bit so we can get our filter up in there. Alright, now for the fun part where we start to put the shiny stuff in the engine bay. So we're going to go ahead and get these prepared. These are the upper tubing, and we're going to go ahead and start putting the upper tubing into the throttle body. Okay, so at this point I have gone ahead and fully prepared the upper portion of the piping. I put the straight rubber coupling on the bottom portion and the stepped rubber coupling on the top portion, and there's 2 clamps on each, one here and one here, and then one here and one here. Now there's also this little mini 5/8 tube that connects into the breather tube, the breather nipple right here, and into the inlet right here where it was on the factory intake as well. So they provide you a little 5/8 rubber hose. It's actually a little bit too long to start with. They give you extra, so what I had to end up doing is cut it, and so I cut it just about in half, and that gave me just about right amount of tubing to transfer between the intake and the breather nipple right there. This is definitely the hardest part of making this fit. This is such a tight fit right here that you're gonna get a little bit of flex in this tube. But just make sure that you have these clamps on here real tight, that there's a real tight seal in there, and you should be fine. Same thing on the other side. In fact, the other side is even worse than the passenger side. I found this right here, making this tube right here fit with with this coupling here was just a nightmare. It was really tough, and you can see how much that tube is kinking in there because it's once you get this up on there, there's almost no room. Like you have the nipple portion of the intake is like right here up against the nipple portion of the breather unit right here. So you got to just get that on there, get your clamps on there real tight, and you should be fine. Now at this point, I'm ready to start putting in my lower tubing. The lower tubing is going to come up through where the intake ducts previously were, and it's going to come up here and connect in through the top portion, obviously. Same thing on both sides. There's the hole where the duct was before. It's going to come up in through here, and then it's going to travel just in front of the radiator core support, and it's going to go down in here on both sides. So I'm going to go ahead and put the lower tubing in. Now you have to find the right one for the right side. They're not the same, so if you've lost track of which one is which, then you just got to try and get them on there, and if it seems like it's not fitting, then it's probably the one for the other side. So it's kind of a trial and error thing. So I'm fitting this up through there, and then it looks like this is the correct side. So this is the passenger side one, so that's going to fit right up in there, and then I'm going to go ahead and attach the filter to that end right there, and then the other one is going to go on the driver's side. Alright, little flash forward here. So I went ahead and routed the lower piping through the ducting and clamped it to the straight coupling right here. Same thing on the other side, through the ducting and clamp it to the coupling here. Once you have it up in there, you want to get it twisted so that the the bend in the piping is up as far as it can go on both sides. You want to make sure that it's all the way up as far as it can go, and then once it's in there and everything is straight, then you want to tighten those clamps up there, because that's where it's going to sit. I then went ahead and took the filters, and I routed the filters from up underneath. I had to push the oil cooler out of the way, and just kind of finagled the filters up underneath the crash bar and got it up onto the piping here, and got it up in there really snug. It's just going to be a matter of wiggling it around and you know, just getting it to fit. It's a really snug fit in there, so it seems like it's not going to fit, but it will, so don't worry about it. You got to get it in there and just really push that filter back onto the piping, then clamp it down, make sure it's real tight, not loose, there's no gaps or anything like that. Same exact thing on the other side. It's a little easier to get the filter up on this side, but again, it is a super tight fit. But once everything was up there, it fit really nice. They give you these two clamps right here. I just could not for the life of me figure out where exactly they wanted me to mount these to the core support. They say in the instructions that you're supposed to mount these things to the core support up here, but there was just no way. For 20 minutes I sat here trying to figure out exactly where they wanted me to bolt it. So being the resourceful one that I am, and having an ample supply of zip ties, I went ahead and just wrapped it around the tubing, pulled it up as high as I could, zip tied it, and then put it behind this bolt that is this portion of the bumper support. And it's real tight. It's not any looser than it would be if it was bolted up into that. I did the same exact thing on this side. I didn't cut this off yet right here, but it's just a zip tie that is through the holes in the clamp, and then it's up behind this thing around the bolt, and then the bolt is tightened all the way, so it's not going anywhere. This is super solid. This is being brought up as far as it can, and it's just as good as if they were bolted in there. So that's the way I did it. If you can figure out how to bolt those up in there, then good for you. I could not, but we are nearly finished here. It's looking great. All the tubing is looking super clean. I'm liking the way it looks. I still do have to mount the horns down there, and in order to do that I have to drill a hole right here. This is pretty dark, sorry about that. There needs to be a hole right here. The horns are going to be mounted right here and here, so they have to be attached right there. So I'm going to go ahead and drill a hole right there and get the horns drilled in. And then here's the wiring that I did earlier that's coming down here. I routed it behind the filters. There's the wiring for both horns. I'll just go ahead and plug those in and then tuck the wiring out of the way. After that, then we'll pull the MAF sensors out of the old stock air boxes and install them in the new MAF sensor ports. And then after that, we're pretty much good to go. We'll reconnect the battery and all that, and should be good. So I'll get started with the horn operation. Alright, we got the horns all sorted out. You can see, or maybe you can't see, I don't know. The horns are now located right here. The core support, center of the core support is right here. And so I drilled a hole right through there and then just mounted the horns up on their own brackets right there in the center. And got them all plugged in and everything, so they should be in good working order and nicely out of the way. At this point, we are pretty much complete. I went ahead and put the MAF sensors in, took them off of the stock boxes, and put the MAF sensors in and plugged them in. That's pretty much it for the installation portion. Now it's just going to be buttoning back up the engine cover, and you got to make sure you re-bolt your power steering fluid cooler. Other than that, you're pretty much good to go. You got the Stillen Gen 3 long tube intake. Looks freaking sick, man. Let me tell you, if I step back and look at it from here, that looks so good, man. It looks so much better than just those stock boxes. So I'm just going to go ahead and put the engine cover back on, and the battery, reconnect the battery, put the battery cover back on, make it look like it never happened, except for all the shiny business going on in there. Alright guys, and there you have it. Everything is all buttoned up, looking nice and tidy. Got the strut bar back on there. I took the liberty of just wiping down the engine cover a little bit so it's nice and shiny, looking pretty clean. I also wiped down all the tubing and stuff because there was an extensive amount of fingerprints and stuff on it from the install. But everything is looking great, looking really good. Excited to fire it up again for the first time. It won't be right at the moment, but it will be very soon. So looking forward to hearing that new sound that we may get out of this. But even more so than that, I'm looking forward to the performance gains that this is going to give me a little bit, especially as I complete my exhaust system through the back. I think it's really all going to come together. But this was a struggle. It was definitely not a super easy install, but it's well worth it. I'm glad I fought the good fight and got through it. Yeah, I definitely suggest, if you got a Z and you're not sure where to start with modifications and stuff like that, get yourself a good high quality intake and exhaust, and you got a pretty good start. So as always, thanks so much for watching this video, guys. I hope it helps some of you guys out. If some of you are looking to go long tube intake, I'll have some more stuff up for you guys as soon as possible. Talk to you guys later.